Welcome to the Inside View. I'm Ralph Renzulli, your host for a series of conversations that will highlight news, events, and people of interest in Little Falls and beyond. I'm starting off with an inside view of city government with newly elected Mayor Deborah Kaufman. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy lady.
Lately, yes, for sure.
Yeah. Let me briefly take you back to election night. When you found out that you were elected, what was the first thought you had?
You know, it was so funny. It was almost surreal. I was living somebody else's life, right? I was excited, but I didn't know what that meant, right? After you work so hard for something and how that would change my life, change a lot of different things. But yeah, I was incredibly excited in it and really more for the fact that we had worked so hard on the campaign, that all that hard work really turned the tables in a direction that no one would have guessed. You know, most people said, you don't have a chance, you know, you're the wrong party, you're a female, you're this or that, you know. But we really changed minds, and I was so excited to look around the room that night, too, and see so many people from different walks of life, different politics, all there just rooting and going crazy. The room was just screaming with joy and excitement. So it was really, I don't think it really dawned on me what just happened until the next day when I started getting calls about 5:30 in the morning.
Right. So, first female elected to the position. What does that mean to you?
You know, it's interesting. I never thought of, when I was running, I never really thought of myself as running because I'm a female or that would be some great advantage. I just assumed, yeah, I'm just like anyone else, you know. I work hard in my background and, you know, things that I think about and all, I'm just like anyone else. So that distinction for me, it seems dated in a way, you know, because we went through all of that, in the 70s, the 80s. But it is relevant to our neck of the woods, right? Where having a woman, a female in the role, I think is important because that's one of the last stepping stones into the modern life, right? That we look at people based on their skills and their knowledge and what they can do for the community rather than gender or even politics, really.
I'm sure you'll set a good example for some young ladies in this town. That's a good thing.
I actually have nieces that are my fan club. And they intend to be mayors one of these days, and they are cute as can be. And so they wanted their picture on my desk, and I have one done so far. But they couldn't be better fans. They have all of my memorabilia, all of my signage and everything. And so on the good side of being the first female mayor, if I can inspire women to look and girls to open their eyes to any possibility, whatever they think that they would like to do, try it, go for it. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Just keep moving forward.
That's a good message. So let me use an analogy. You are now the CEO of Little Falls, New York. Mm-hmm. You've got people reporting to you, departments to oversee, budgets to develop and maintain, and finances to control and maintain and monitor, and all the other things that go along with successfully running a business,
right?
Which in essence, that's what Little Falls government is. Mm-hmm. How would you describe your management style in your approach to all of this?
I lean into revenue in a big way and the financial conditions, always monitoring that. It's from my corporate background. I've been CEO before. I've been president, COO before. I've managed 120 people in a couple of different companies. I've worked public and private companies, turnarounds, startups. So for me, it's always about watching the dollars coming in. Where are the dollars and do we have them? And if we don't, there's a constant search for what do we do next to keep things moving forward. I don't micromanage, but I do like being kept in the loop. So I think my management style is Once I communicate something, you've got the ball. I expect feedback. If you can't make a deadline, I expect feedback as to why. So I trust people. We have a really good team that I'm working with. The very first thing you do as a mayor is you look around and you say, okay, here's my plan. Here's how I'm going to execute it. Do I have the people to be able to execute it? And after, I'd say the first 2 weeks, I had a real sense of, okay, they are the right people. We've got the right people. It's a matter of changing hearts and minds to a certain extent, and getting them to believe that Little Falls can be great again, and greater than what we've ever done in our history. To just think about it differently, and we're going to do it on my watch. We are going to make the change, and every single one of the departments have been incredible to work with. Once we got all on the same page, we started looking at what we could do. Codes and police in the police department. I work closely with them every single day. Fire department, EMS, all of the different departments, DPW. So I trust the management and the department heads, and so we have a really tight dialogue going, especially on some of the things we're trying to move forward very quickly here in the beginning.
You've never worked in government previously, I don't think. So
No.
When you took office, how did you go about getting acclimated to the various moving parts that we have at City Hall?
There's a lot of regulatory, as you might imagine. So there's like 5 steps to something I could do in a private company in 1 step. So that's a little cumbersome, I would say. And there's some things you can do to streamline that just haven't been done before, but looking at it with a different set of eyes from a corporate mindset, you see, okay, we need this desperately, but we don't need that. And so the idea that we've done it this way for 100 years, well, that's wonderful, but there may be another way, and let me show you how. So I'm changing things to streamline a lot, to make it a little bit more efficient. I'm more data-driven than what they've ever been, so I like facts and figures. I think that probably the most challenging part of it is the regulatory environment where you're working with civil service, you're working with the unions. You've got an extra layer in there that in some of the private companies you might not have. You always have a board of directors, so you're always reporting to a board, right? And you always have, depending on what you're doing, even we were involved in software development, so we had a lot of regulations that we were adhering to. So somewhat familiar. The everyday running a company of 80 employees is very familiar to me. It's natural. I'm in my comfort zone. The politics of it all is something you kind of have to get accustomed to, because I'm not as politically driven as you might think. I really took the job and campaigned hard for it to solve problems, and that's what I'm doing every single day.
Cool. If you had to pick 3 upper-level issues or problems that need your undivided attention over the next, say, 90 to 180 days, what would they be, and what would you do about each one of them?
Well, if you're asking about the top picks here, we have some that are really in our face right now. The homeless problem, trespassing, squatters. We have, different kinds of people coming through, transient people coming through, that oftentimes are heavily medicated. They are, some are mentally ill. Some are a little bit dangerous, So there are a lot of things that we're dealing with in Little Falls that we've never had to deal with before. So those public safety for me is front and center. The next thing I'm working with is cleaning up our town. We've got houses that are zombie houses and houses in distress. We have 100 of them. Cleaning up those properties or doing something with them, that's 100 properties off the tax rolls that, aren't doing anyone any good. Some of them have been abandoned for years, and others you can't find the ownership. It's just, who knows? And so they go into this kind of limbo. we have quite a few of them actually that are distressed, but not, total teardowns. And so I'm working on that to see if we might be able to get them back in. We could use housing stock. There's no doubt about it. Single family homes, we just can't. We don't have enough. And so if I can convert those, working with qualified builders or people who can renovate, that would be something that would be very powerful. Not only would we be able to create some environments for people to come in affordably into a new home, we're also cleaning up neighborhoods and we're putting them back on the tax rolls, which we really need.
How many of those homes do you think are that the county literally owns right now, as opposed to the homeowner? The homeowner foreclosed, went to the county for back taxes. Do you have a handle on that?
Oh gosh, I would think my guess would be about 80% are with the county. What happens is if they don't pay their taxes and the water bill and whatnot in Two Little Falls, it gets turned to the county to collect, and the county collects them. And after a number of years, they just, what are you going to do? It's not collectible.
Well, you talked about revenue. That affects our revenue, obviously, if you
does.
have fewer taxes being collected. I would think with mortgage rates the way they are and how difficult it is for some young people to get into a new home, I think your idea is good. If you could find a few of these and get them rehabilitated so they could bid on them.
Yeah, they're, they're the land bank and then a new land bank coming about from Herkimer County. So they're great at finding funding to tear down or to rehab. I see the opportunity for us right now in the immediate future to look at individuals who can convert these, or people who, gosh, if I could find tradesmen, Little Falls is really lacking in the trades. We need more people. We need plumbers, electricians. And if I could find people like that, I would love to set up a program to be able to get people who are hardworking people but just starting out in life, young family. These old houses are huge. There's plenty of room, but it will take some sweat equity to turn them around. And so we do have some programs already that have been implemented over the years. I'd like to tighten them up a little bit, but I'm really looking for that mark, as you say, trying to get a young family into home equity, to start building their equity and to be able to move things along. One of the programs that I've been working with is one where they have to stay in the property. They have to build it. They have to have some sweat equity into it, kind of like Habitat for Humanities, where you actually are in there and you're working, you're doing things, but you also have to meet certain code criteria and guidelines in order to be able to do that. But you are able to get in. It's your home for 5 years. You keep it up and all. You can sell it at that point, but you have to stay in it for 5 years at least. And it has to adhere to all codes from the moment you get in to the moment you leave. So we're really going to be sticklers on codes going forward.
So you've named 2 issues: homeless population and the zombie properties. What would be the third one? And you can do 5 if you like. It's okay.
Just keep going. The financial condition of the city is really important to me. We have been doing without and scraping the bottom of the barrel for a long time. I mean, it's to the point we don't even know what it would be like to have money to spend on the things we desperately need, I'm going after every grant I can find to help to offset some of the expenses that we would typically have. Very pro-grant, and a lot of what Chet Szymanski, our engineer, has been working on are grants. And it makes a huge difference to be able to pay for some of the infrastructure things even that we have to deal with. But equipment, ambulances, fire trucks, police cars, all of that, really working the grants. The other thing I am working is shared services. Shared services meaning we have, as a city, the organizational structure and the capacity to grow very quickly, to ramp up, to be able to help other communities with some of the service needs that they have. We have a relationship now with Dallasville, and we work with them on engineering services. We work with other communities on police and fire. So we have already existing relationships. I'm looking at advancing more of those and also looking at contracts that we had years ago that just, went by the wayside and no one ever picked them up again. So revenue again, constantly looking at revenue. We can't cut our way out of our situation. We have to grow revenue. We have to jump forward and be able to do that. We're pretty much, you look at everything and there's no squandering of money going on that I can find. Everything is really, really tight. But there hasn't been a business person in the chair for a very long time, if ever. I don't know. So I look at things very differently. It's black and white. We either have the money or we don't have the money. And so my job is to make sure we have the money to go forward and build.
All right, so we have a revenue problem as opposed to an expense or services problem. So here's a subject that's been kicked around for quite a long time in Little Falls, and that's property reevaluation, which obviously affects revenue.
It does.
Which could affect it in a number of ways, actually. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the magic question that no mayor wants to ever discuss, right? But you
That's
can't.
why I'm asking.
But you have to be honest with reality, right? You look at it and you say, okay, we haven't evaluated or reevaluated since 1972. Is our assessed value out of whack? More than likely it is. Most people, most cities assess every other year, or bring that up to market value. We haven't. So, for instance, if we had a house that in 1972 was valued at $50,000, and today it's valued at $300,000, there's a big gap there. So, when someone new moves into town, of course, they're looking at market value for the property. Whatever it's listed at, that's what their taxes will be. So, it's the people who've been in their existing houses for a long time. That is the sticky part, right? I don't intend to do anything until I have a really good look at the data. I don't know what that data shows. I do know that there are quite a few properties that are miscategorized. And that would be my first attempt to start looking at what could we do there. And when I say miscategorized, that's a warehouse that is built up and is assessed as an empty warehouse that now is 4 floors of lots of retail, different things going on. You have others who have taken a shack and built it into, multi-million-dollar entity. So you have to look at how things are categorized. Are they categorized correctly? The other thing is when you look at residential, a lot of our single-family residential properties are assessed as single family and never changed over, and now they're an 8-plex, and they're commercial property, right? So we've got a lot of things that we could look at, just the low-hanging fruit. Just look and see how things are categorized and is it fair? Because
so whose responsibility would that be to take that first step and recategorize and review?
That would be, we would do it at the city. It would be hiring a consultant to look through all of that data and pull it, and there are consultants that just do that as a whole.
Any idea what a study like that would cost?
They tell me $175,000. So they have looked at it in the past. No mayor has been willing to really do much with it, and for political reasons. But I didn't get in here for political reasons. I got in here to solve problems. And I do not want to raise taxes on grandma and grandpa who are barely making a go of it. I will do everything in my power to not do that. But on the other hand, I have to look at people that are not paying their fair share. So there are people, it's really out of balance, when you have someone who is struggling to make their payment every month and then someone else who has taken advantage of the system and should be paying their fair share. And if you think about it in terms of if everybody is paying in at an equal amount, and which is their fair share, your bucket is pretty full. You might even have the opportunity to reduce the percentage of tax, because you're now getting people who weren't paying but 25% or 10% because they were miscategorized, they're paying their fair share. So that's my approach to it, my thoughts on it. It is one of those things I will not make a move until I really understand what's going on and what we can do. And it will be the least painful thing for the community as a whole. And I will get expert opinion and bring people in before making a move like that.
So you're going to let the data drive that decision?
The data is going to drive it. Even a baby step. I don't think you have to go through something like this and make a huge leap forward. If we could move everybody up to 10% more, and then 10 years from now, we'll move them up a little bit more. This doesn't have to be done all overnight, but we have to start working in a direction that will help the community. And we have a limited number of taxpayers, and our population continues to decline. We need to build a population up. The more people paying in, the easier it is on everybody. And we need to build population.
Well,
the right kind of population, of course, meaning those who buy homes and contribute.
And as it's been said, some people will pay more, some people will pay less.
Right.
Some people may stay the same.
Right.
So doing the report, taking that first step is probably absolutely critical.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's one of those things I'm very, very cautious about. And I want to understand the data better. And I haven't had a look at the data, so I can't really make a judgment at this point in time. But it is something I'm going to look at. I think it's fair. And, a lot of people during the campaign were asking me to reassess. And the reason for that was, their property is still being evaluated at the $50,000, if we're going to use that example. And they've got a $300,000 home. Well, what if they want to take some of the equity out of their home? Who's going to say, it's valued at $50,000, how much are you going to get here? Or what if they want to sell it for $400,000? And they look at the tax and say, no, it's valued taxed at $50,000 and you want $400,000. It makes a tough case, to be able to get market share. People would look at that and say, maybe not so much, pass it by.
Do you have a timeline in your head for this?
This is not going to happen probably. I would say being able to look at the numbers this year would be a real plus. But I think it's going to take a couple of years of analyzing to really get into it and see what's the appropriate play here. And we've got great committees, and we've got a lot of people who are very smart on the outside that would lend their thought process. The state even has a department that helps work through these issues. So I'm not, I'm thinking very, very small steps in that direction, but we have to start looking at it in
I
a
think being
serious way.
cautious is the right approach. I want to go back to homelessness. As you know, and as you mentioned in your common council meeting last night, Chief Thomas published his letter, which explained his limitations on what he can do with the homeless population and what he can't do. I thought it was a good letter. I think he got his point across. But, he said in and of itself, homelessness is not a crime.
Right.
But what do you say, or what would you say to people who are just uncomfortable in town with this issue?
Yeah.
Because, it's an aesthetic issue. It's a growing problem. At least it appears to be a growing problem. I can't put numbers to it, but from what I've seen, it's a problem. So what do you tell people, other than the legal stuff that the chief can do and can't do?
It is a problem. It's a growing problem, and it will continue unless there is some major changes in the whole political scene that has a different perspective about so many people coming into the country. All of us, regardless of party, are not appreciating some of what we're seeing, and it is concerning. My niece at 10 years old was, babysitting and decided to walk down to McDonald's in the middle of not early evening, but still dark out. And, when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, that is so dangerous. I never would have thought that growing up, right? And so some of it, we have part of the problem with the homeless that we're seeing, they are being displaced by the migrants downstate. So they're being pushed out of shelters and out of areas and up our way. And there's an encampment, about 200 of them, from what I hear, in Herkimer. And as soon as they do something to move them out, they move to Little Falls. And in Little Falls, if they trespass and we move them out, property owner works with us, we move them out, they show up in Herkimer. So we just keep passing it around to the neighboring communities, right? I'm working with the police chief, and we're working also with other mayors and other police chiefs to see what we can come up with. It is uncomfortable when you have people who are mentally ill. Many of them also, drug abuse that is extreme, and often that is the same person. And so you might think, well, you could have a natural conversation with them, but not so much. And so it is scary because it's the unknown. What do we do? And do they have a weapon, a knife? What's their intent? And we've had issues where, you'd be riding your bike down on the canal there, and getting knocked off by someone who is homeless, and others where they pulled out a knife, or they're trying to break into your building. So we have reason to be concerned. The good thing is any of those incidents like that, if they're reported to the police, they can act on things. The problem we have is we are very compassionate people too, and we don't want to, when somebody's down on their luck, we don't want to just pile on. But we also want to keep and protect our quality of life. People move to Little Falls because it is the safest place on the planet, or it always has been. And it's the quality of life we have here. Kids play in the parks, they play ball, they're running all over. This is fresh air and just a lot of wholesomeness. We don't want to change that. That's why we're here. And it's worth protecting. So it is one of those things that there's no easy answer. It's a complex situation. But when people trespass and the property owners decide, just send them away, I really don't want to press charges, you're inviting them to go to your neighbor's house, essentially. And so we've got to take a strong stand as citizens, I think. And when they do, commit a crime, we have to go forward. We have to be able to do the paperwork and the tough side.
Right. This may be a question better posed to the chief, but I'll ask you anyway. Is it true that if a property doesn't have no trespassing signs up, that you cannot press criminal charges against somebody who's on your property? Is that true?
You can press charges. Where the signs really help is when it gets to the court. The courts are overflowing, right? And so they're looking for cases that it is really obvious that this person trespassed. They couldn't have guessed that, well, I didn't see anybody there, nobody was there, there weren't any signs not to go into the building. So it's really making the process more efficient and better. You have a better chance of having success if it's more detailed like that. So yes, they do make a difference.
So if I wake up one morning to find one of these people in my backyard, from what I understand, if I walk up to that person and say, look, I really want you to leave, and that person leaves, no malicious intent on that person's part, there's no violation of law in that case. Correct?
Right, because you basically asked them to leave. It is private property and you are trespassing, and they left. So if they refuse to leave is where you might have the trespassing problem, especially if you have on your gates going to your backyard and things like you have the no trespassing, or, outbuildings, the no trespassing sign. It does really help to make a case.
But in Little Falls, New York, we don't want no trespassing signs all over town. That won't look right. That would be...
I know. And, I see them and I understand. And I don't know what the answer is to that. When It's not that you can't press charges, from what my understanding. It's just making it easier when you get to court. And a lot of cases get kicked because there's just not enough evidence that they were trespassing. In your opinion, that they were trespassing, and their opinion might be different. Most of the people that we're seeing now, the homeless, unlike any other time from what I hear, is that they are more inclined to live on the street, want to live on the street. They do not want help. They don't want to go to the shelters. They are really, they have their lifestyle, and that's what they're sticking with. And to them, sleeping on in somebody's backyard, on their front porch, they see nothing, wrong with it. So oftentimes they want to know, well, where would you like me to, when the police stop them and talk to them, where would you like me to be? Is there a park or someplace I can go? Right? The police also, our city police officers will always ask them, do you, want to go to a shelter? Do you need help with services and things? They will drive them. They will transport them to Herkimer or to Utica. Even yesterday, when we were moving trespassers off one property, our police officer was helping pack the cart up and make sure the covering was tight on it and bringing it up to the road so that it was easier for the person to move. So there's a lot of compassion, and we have to weigh that with what's real. But has it changed our quality of life? Our concern about walking the dog, walking down Main Street as a 10-year-old. When we were kids, we walked all over Main Street, right? We never thought anything about it. So it is one of those things that, in my mind, hopefully will be a temporary blip in our lives. And we'll look back at it and say, wow, I'm glad that's done, But I am not in the position to, I want to protect our citizens above all, okay? I appreciate people who want to come through to Little Falls and they want to look around and see if that might be for them. But if they're going to trash the place and they're not going to respect our quality of life and want to participate in it, then I don't think we're the right community for them.
Are there any local ordinances that could be passed to deal with this in any way?
There are. Our ordinances, we have a lot of good ordinances, but I think we're looking right now at a new one, actually a couple of them, that I think will help. They were never written with the idea of having a surge of migrants or homeless coming into our city and having to deal with that and all of the challenges that would bring. And in years past, someone homeless would want shelter, would want someone to bring them in, give them a job. And so we have a different culture that is coming through. And it's just like if someone comes into your home and they trash the place and they're rude and disrespectful and threatening to your family and friends, you don't invite them back. Little Falls, we have a quality of life here, and we're not going to give it up easily.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's move on to a different topic. Talk about the 311 system and what that is and how that's going to help people in Little Falls.
311 is, it's an app. It's a mobile app that allows better communication with the city. A lot of cities have adopted this technology over the past few years. And what it does is allows you to, it's like City Hall in the palm of your hands. You have all the phone numbers, you have maps, you have anything you would want for different departments. But the important thing is people call City Hall all the time and maybe it's a pothole, maybe the plow didn't come down the street correctly or whatever it happens to be. Maybe the garbage didn't get completely picked up, little issues like that. And oftentimes they'll tell me that they just never heard back, that it was usually fixed, but they just never heard, that the communication gets in any organization, it goes from one place to another, and then it's passed on, and the guy who cited the complaint to begin with never hears back as to what the resolution was. So it's one of those apps that people really like because it is not a 911 app. You wouldn't call it if you have an emergency. You would call 911. But if you have any of the other things that you want to talk about, it could be that you've spotted someone trespassing, or you see something that's concerning. In the app, you basically file your complaint. You fill out the information. It comes into City Hall and goes to however we have designated that the algorithms to and configured it to be assigned to. So if it is plowing, then it would go to DPW. It would also go to other people. It would be, it might start out as, a DPW at a lower level, somebody who could just respond quickly. If it's more complex, then it would go to John Sullivan, who is the supervisor there. And it would also maybe copy me in, maybe copy Chet Szymanski, who works closely with DPW. So anybody depending on the call. So think of it as a help desk. If you have a complaint about your software and you go to the help desk and you tell them what your problem is, right? And initially, you probably get a whole lot of just, does this work? Or you read this column, does this help you? And obviously it doesn't, so we're not going to do that. But you will eventually meet a person or someone to chat with. This is the same kind of escalation of problem, right? So you start out at one level and it moves to the next, and the whole time that it's moving from one level to the next, you're getting a response back on your cell phone, a notification that says it's been received, they're working on it, and then if it moves up to the next level, the next person is a response. When it's resolved, it's a response. So keeping you in the loop the whole time.
Right. So when somebody goes on their app on their phone, I assume they have to have a phone to do this, right? They don't initially get a person. Is it a recording, or do they get a representative?
No. It would be all automated, and so it would go through text. It would be my understanding through the system, and it would show up on their phone. So if you've got somebody in DPW that is responsible for handling those calls, it would pop up on their cell phone that the person has a complaint or has a concern.
Okay, is there a way for people who don't have smartphones to place a call, to place a complaint?
It's my understanding that there is a web-based application, so you could do it from the website, the Little Falls website. So this is, iOS and Android mobile phone apps, but you also can do it from the website.
So it sounds like this will take some heat off 911 in Herkimer.
Yes.
I would think.
And it makes us better organized. Things get lost, little pieces of paper here or there that there's a note on it, go check with so-and-so, this is going on. We actually will have a record of it and the data analytics that go with it.
Right, the documentation's really good. Mm-hmm. There'll be follow-up. What about the crank complaints and people goofing around, and even kids? Yeah. I assume anybody can get the app.
Yes. Just
download it and away you go.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Little Falls is a small city. And there are people who just enjoy, poking the bear all the time, right? So, yeah, I mean, they're pretty much known. But I don't think you would ever erase that. You still get that with phone calls. You get a lot of things. But there is that potential. But the thing of it is we have a record. So if someone calls in, at 590 Garden Street all the time, we have a record of everything that they called about previously. So, we can refer back and identify pretty quickly if somebody is just playing around or somebody is serious.
So what will this cost the city to put into place?
This is more of a service agreement on an annual basis. And it's a nominal fee. You choose which modules you want. They have modules for notifications. They have modules for codes enforcement, which would be really interesting. And it all adds up. It usually starts anywhere around 4,000 or 5,000, and then it goes up from there. So it's not a pricey thing as one might think. The whole website and everything that we've been doing so far with the new website and the functionality has been volunteered and given to the city at no cost. So we work with whatever we can that doesn't cost a dime, but there are some things that cost a little. And I think the engagement with the citizens with this app they'll love it because it does give quick response. At least you know what's going on all the time. And from an operational perspective, I can map out trends, different things that are happening. Maybe we've got, a run on potholes in one area of town. What can we do to make that a priority? Because we're getting lots of calls about it. It could be anything, right? Or we're seeing things that look dangerous to them. Let's go in and take a look at it. So that, I think, spotting the trends will make a difference too.
Moving on to Main Street. And this is just my observation. I can't quantify this. It's just my observation. I walk a lot around the city. It seems like 5-6 years ago, business activity, storefronts were more occupied back then. It was sort of on the upswing, and it kind of plateaued. Mm-hmm. And after COVID, it seems like it's gone down. There are probably more empty storefronts on Main Street now than there were 5-6 years ago, I think. Do you have a plan to revitalize Main Street and attract more business?
Oh, yeah.
Can I hear about that? Let's hear about that.
It's funny. In the past, where our policies have been just to wait and magic will show up one day. I have a different perspective. I think it is a matter of proactively going after businesses that you think will fit in our mix. And I think Main Street is a perfect place for restaurants, perfect place for entertainment. It really works well there. And the small shops that grow up as a result of that kind of traffic is wonderful. But I think you have to get some anchor tenants, just like if you had a shopping mall. What do? You bring in your big tenants first, the ones that you know will attract a lot of traffic. So we have an ongoing initiative with both a mix of private and public individuals who are working on ideas like that. And economic development, Dave, my husband, my little fellow's Dave, and I have been working on economic development for a long time. Very passionate about it, and Main Street has our attention. So you're right. COVID, we lost a lot of businesses from COVID, businesses that we should never have lost, After COVID, we got a little bit of an uptick, and then it dropped again. We have, for businesses to come into our area, we have to have a good amount, or those that are very attractive, because we don't want to bring somebody in and not be able to make it on the street traffic. We also have to be able to promote the city, promote what we have, and bring more people in. Because there's nothing, we want downtown to be a thriving place that everybody really makes some good money, and it keeps the downtown area vibrant. And that takes also working with the retailers. And I've been up and down the street talking to the businesses, and they're a wealth of knowledge as far as what would work. And most of them are looking, not most, but a good portion of them are looking at, if I could get the traffic up a little bit here, I would expand. I'm looking at some of the buildings here too. A couple of them have already invested in other buildings down on Main Street, looking at expansion plans. So it's very good. So that helps with it to leverage that story with others who might be looking at moving in. But it's a very proactive. You have to work it. You have to go out to the other communities. You have to see things that work for them and those who might have an interest in moving to our city.
As you were talking to these business owners, did you get a feel for what their opinion is of the new canopy that's going to be built?
It's funny. The canopy is one of those things. A lot of them don't want it. There are others that are really, they love it. But it's kind of a mixed bag. But I would say that a lot of them have shared that they, it does nothing for them. They could care less about it. Going back to the old facades where they had the roll-out canopies and things like that, I know Cooperstown does that. It really looks nice. So I think there are other options on the canopies. The reason the change in the canopies and the repair of the canopies went through the DRI process, and that is one of the grants that was awarded, is that we were looking at those canopies being so old that they really need to be repaired, right? But also looking at the opportunity to provide fire exits for building owners. So if they wanted to expand their upper floors, they would have the confidence that they'd be able to get, the safety concerns addressed when we did those additional canopies. So that's kind of up in the air. We'll see what happens with that as the final plans start shaking out. But I'd say it's a mixed bag. I would say that of the people I've talked to, probably 60% don't care if they have it at all. And then there are others that love it. But certainly, in my opinion, if we're going to do canopies, we need to have them historically correct and look like they belong to a turn-of-the-century building. Anything contemporary, anything... the ones that we have right now, to me, are not very attractive. And the initial drawing that I saw long ago was not very attractive. Of course, in my mind, I have New Orleans, and the wrought iron canopies and the beautiful stepping out where they have restaurants up on the upper floors and they sit there and have a glass of wine and look over the community. And those upper floors, they have such incredible views. And even in our early zoning codes, the blocking the upper floors from the river was a no-no. That was one of the things not allowed. So you couldn't go up too high on the other side of the street to block the views.
So the design of the canopy is still a work in progress. Is that what you're saying?
In my opinion, yes. I don't think, what happens is when we send in the DRI projects, the next step is they are analyzed, and it's a long process. And you go back to drawing, and you get the final plans and all of that. And so there's a lot of time to really review the canopies, just like diagonal parking and some of the other things we were looking at. There have been people who like it, some people don't like it at all, and have some real concerns. So we need to look at those things as we go forward. We're not quite there yet. Very, very early stages of Main Street.
Yeah, it's really a 5-year process. Things move. We're finding this out at our public library that the process is rather slow.
It is, and there's opportunity here and there
but
to
very
tweak
worthwhile
them.
to do.
Yeah, to make it even better than what we initially thought.
Good. So, do you have anything else that you'd like the public to know about you and what you're doing? And I know last night you mentioned that your first 30 days were a whirlwind.
Oh, yes. Yes. The first week was kind of crazy, even, My first week I had a snow ban, the parking ban, and all that always brings out lots of debate over what is meant, right? So went through that, and then, had a strange stalker incident, and then locked myself in the ladies' room, which, for the first week I figured, it doesn't get any better, right? And then, we've had all kinds of crazy things going on, recently. But overall, I think it has been just a really good experience. And I see progress happening every single day. And it's, that's what drives me. And it really makes it worthwhile, where you get up in the morning, you can't wait to get in there.
And I understand a local volunteer renovated your office, and it's a little more comfortable than it was before.
It's very nice. This local volunteer, I'm indebted to him. He does many, many things that go beyond the household honeydew list. But yes, it is very comfortable, and made a big difference. And we've cleaned up a lot in City Hall. We moved boxes that were in the hallways for 5 years, and we're really cleaning up everything, not just outside City Hall, but inside City Hall. So when people come in, they feel welcome. They feel that there's a breath of fresh air, and things are moving and changing and very positive.
I think City Hall would be a good topic for a future discussion.
City Hall's a big topic. I would love to get that back into a grant. It was one that did not make it in the final cut, but I did have it in there. It is an icon in Main Street. There's no question about it. It's such a beautiful building, but it does need repairs. We've got to start at some point. So I would welcome the conversation.
So this was good for our first try, and I'm glad you did this. I know you're busy, and I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you'll come back for another.
Absolutely.
Visit.
I love it. I really enjoyed getting out when I was campaigning and meeting people and talking to them. And, the dialogues that we started, I feel like we need to continue. There's so much that we're working on, and I love the input from people and people who call me and send me notes. That's what it's all about. I want City Hall and what I'm doing to be situations very approachable for everyone.
Well, I think this is a good mechanism, a good way for you to get your message out, talk about issues and problems, whether they're good or bad. The public has a right to know. So that's
True.
one of the reasons I'm doing this. So I appreciate you doing this, and I guess
It's my pleasure.
We'll schedule another visit, and we'll wrap it up right there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Sounds
very much.
great.